Hello students, this is Sharma, teacher of Ambi International School, Nayagaon, Kota. So kids, today we will be read a chapter which name is Chapter 1, Peter Pan. So kids, let's start the extract Peter Pan. Mr. and Mrs. Darling were a happily married couple and with three children named Wendy, John and Michael. So these are the character named Mr. and Mrs. Darling, and they were having a children like Wendy, John and Michael. Mr. Darling did not earn much. What he earned was just enough to look after the needs of his wife and children. Mr. Darling जो थे वो इतना ज़्यादा कुछ earn नहीं करते थे, और जो भी कुछ वो earn करते थे they just spent out on his wife and children. But Mr. and Mrs. Darling wanted the best of everything for their three children. लेकिन जो Mr. और Mrs. Darling थे, they always wanted the best for their children. So they were sent to Miss Falsom's kindergarten school, which was a famous one in the neighborhood. So they decided to go down in the Miss Falsom's kindergarten, which was a famous one in the neighborhood, जो कि neighborhood में सबसे famous kindergarten था. The three children also had a nurse to take care of them. The three children had a nurse, and guess who was the nurse? Now it was a huge dog called Nana. The nurse was a huge dog. Her name was Nana. Nana was an excellent caretaker. She accompanied them to school, carried an umbrella in her mouth in case it rained. And even so, Nana was an excellent caretaker. She accompanied them to school. वो उनको स्कूल भी ले जाती थी. Carried an umbrella in her mouth in case if अगर रेन आ जाए तो उसने अपने माउथ में एक अम्ब्रेला भी कैरी कर रखा होता था. इवन मतलब वो हर तरह से वो उसका टेक केयर करती थी वो हमेशा. Back then, if any of the children cried at night, she was the first to wake up. Every day, Nana waited in a room in the basement of Miss Palsom's school for the children to finish school. So, if any of the children cried at night, कोई भी बच्चा अगर रात को परेशान हो जाता था तो नाना ही थी जो कि उनको जगाती थी. And every day, नाना हमेशा वहाँ पे Miss Palsom के basement में wait किया करती थी so that children can finish their school and go with her. The Darlings, their children, and the faithful Nana were a simple and a happy life. The Darlings and their children and the faithful Nana were having a simple and a happy family. Every night Mrs. Darling had a routine. It was a strange routine. So Mrs. Darling का एक routine था. Every night it was a strange routine. ये बहुत ही strange routine था. She would look through the minds of her three children. She could see whatever the children had thought of during the day and the feeling they had felt. So उनका routine क्या था? वो रोज़ाना क्या करती थी? अपने जो children थे उनके mind को देखा करती थी, उनके mind को lead करने की कोशिश किया करती थी. She could see whatever the children had thought of during the day and feeling they had felt. वो ये देखा करती थी कि पूरे day में children ने क्या सोचा है and what they were feeling. So then she would sort out their feeling and put them in the correct places so that she could sort out the feeling और उनको एक correct places में रख दिया करती थी. उन feelings को correct places में रख दिया करती थी उनके mind में. She would put all the unkind and mean feelings at the bottom of their minds. वो क्या करती थी? जो भी unkind और mean feelings होती थी उनके mind की तो उनको bottom में रखा करती थी. Then the kind and gentle feeling would put on the top of their minds. और जो काइंड और जेंटल फीलिंग्स हुआ करती थी वो उनको टॉप पर रख दिया करती थी. दिस वॉज टू हेल्प द चिल्ड्रन यूज द काइंड एंड जेंटल फीलिंग्स फर्स्ट बिकॉज दे वर ऑन टॉप. और इससे क्या होता था? उनको हेल्प मिलता था, जो चिल्ड्रन थे उनको हेल्प मिलता था काइंड और जेंटल बनने का. इट वॉज लाइक अ टाइडिंग एंड क्लियरिंग आउट ड्रॉर्स, sorting things and putting them back where they belong. It was like tidying and clearing out drawers. ये टाइडिंग करना अपने ड्रॉर्स को और क्लियरिंग करना जैसा था. सॉर्टिंग थिंग्स को सॉर्ट करके जैसे हम रखते हैं एंड पुटिंग दैम बैक वेयर दे बिलोंग, और हम उन चीज़ों को वापस से अपनी ड्रॉर में एज इट इज़ सॉर्ट आउट करके रख देते हैं जहाँ पे वो बिलोंग करती है, जहाँ से वो बिलोंग करती हैं. When Mrs. Darling was going through the kids' minds one night, she noticed something strange. One day when Mrs. Darling was going through the kids' minds, when she was reading the kids' minds, she noticed something strange, that what she noticed that the word Peter was repeated in their minds. She noticed that the word Peter was repeating again and again in their minds. Peter wasn't anyone she knew. अब पीटर तो ऐसा कोई भी नहीं था जिसको वो जानती थी. The next day, she asked the Wendy about Peter. Next day, what happened? She asked Wendy about the Peter, that who is he, my dear? She asked Wendy that who is he? So Wendy said that he is Peter Pan, mother. वो कौन है? Peter Pan है. After thinking long and hard about it, she vaguely remembered that she had heard about a little boy named Peter Pan when she was a little girl. Now, Mrs. Darling also remembered the boy named Peter Pan. She remembered that he was not alike any other boy. उनको remember होता है कि वो बाकी boys की तरह नहीं है. He lived among fairies in a faraway place called Neverland. वो fairies के साथ रहता है बहुत ही दूर. कौन सी प्लेस पर? नेवरलैंड में. बट शी सेड टू वेंडी he would be grown up by this name, but she said to Wendy that now he has grown up boy. So Wendy said no, he isn't grown up. Wendy told her confidently, and he is just my size. He said also to her that he is just my size. A few days later, Mrs. Darling found some leaves on the nursery floor. The leaves had not been there the previous night. Now Mrs. Darling found that nursery के floor पर कुछ leaves रखी हुई हैं, leaves हैं, and the leaves had not been there the previous night, and she thinks that वो जो leaves थी वो previous night तो थी ही नहीं. Now, when Mrs. Darling told the children about this, Wendy said, I do believe it is the Peter Pan again. So, when Mrs. Darling asked about the children, Wendy said that I have a firm faith that it is for sure Peter Pan again. Whatever do you mean, Wendy? It is so naughty of him not to wipe his feet before coming in, Wendy said. So, sign. Wendy कहता है कि whatever it is so naughty of him, it is so mischievous of him that he isn't wipe his feet before coming in. Mrs. Darling was sure that Wendy must have been dreaming. Mrs. Darling was sure that Wendy for sure कोई dream ही देख रहा है. When she looked carefully at the leaves, however, Mrs. Darling found that none of the leaves were from trees that grew in England. So, she was thinking, Mrs. Darling was thinking that Wendy must have been dreaming, but she found some leaves which is not belongs to a tree in England. The next night was Nana's day off. Next night Nana का day off था. So Mrs. Darling bathed the children and put them to bed. She was happy to see them fast so cozily. So comfortably. So she sat down next to the fireplace to sleep. It took her just a few moments to fall asleep. When she was sitting down in front of a fireplace, it took her just a few moments to fall asleep. Now she was sleeping, and she started dreaming that boy had broken through from Neverland and had come close to the real world. She sees in the dream that a boy broke the door of Neverland and come to the real world. While she was dreaming, the nursery window opened and a boy did enter in the nursery. A strange light, no bigger than your fist, accompanied him. It darted about the room like a living thing and woke up Mrs. Darling. She saw in the dream that a strange light, no bigger than the fist, accompanied him. So, a boy along with the flashlight accompanied him. It darted about the room like a living thing and woke up Mrs. Darling. Mrs. Darling saw the boy and knew at once that he was Peter Pan. He was a lovely boy and was dressed in leaves. Now Mrs. Darling was recognized boy that he was none other than Peter Pan. He was a lovely boy and was dressed in the leaves. The most enchanting thing about him was that he had all his set of baby teeth. The most attractive thing about him that he had set of babies. He had the teeth of set of baby teeth. Till now, when Peter Pan saw that Mrs. Darling was a grown-up, he gnashed his teeth in anger. When Peter Pan saw that Mrs. Darling was a grown-up, he gnashed his teeth in anger. He was expecting to see only the children. अब जब Peter Pan आया room में, so he just broke out with anger because he just expecting the children only. Mrs. Darling screamed in fright, and hearing her, Nana came into the room. Mrs. Darling was quite frightened, and she called Nana. Nana suddenly came into the room, and Nana growled and sprung at Peter Pan. But Peter Pan was too quick for her. Before Nana realized, he had jumped out of the window and disappeared. Mrs. Darling rushed out onto the cedar street to look for him, but all she could see was a shooting star far away in the sky. So when she called Nana, and before Nana realized that she had to jump on Peter Pan, he had jumped out of the window. वो खुद विंडो से जंप कर गया and disappeared, और वो वहाँ से disappear हो गया. Mrs. Darling rushed out onto the street to look for him. Mrs. Darling rushed out to उसको देखने के लिए गई, उसको देखने के लिए गई, सर्च करने के लिए गई, but all she could see that a shooting star far away in the sky. So that was the story about Peter Pan. Hope you understood it. Thank you.